Good morning and welcome to the Roundtable Consult. I am your host, Dr. Mark Williams, and I'm joined as always by my wonderful co-host, attorney Sonia Madison. How you doing, Sonia?
Are we waiting for or pausing for dramatic effect, or what was
It
happening?
was. It wasn't dramatic enough for you. I'm feeling pretty dramatic this week, so
It
celebrating
has
another
been
birthday.
getting cold. I mean, I see you got your sweatshirt on, so I take it you're cold.
Yes, exactly. I
It's
said,
getting cold.
this is the one good thing about fall and winter is that it's hoodie season for me. And I'm like, man, I love these things. If I could wear hoodies every day, I absolutely would.
So when Trayvon Martin, the whole black hoodie thing, you was probably like, "Nah, don't do that to my hoodies now."
I really wasn't into them before then. And since then, I probably, this probably been about a 7 or 8 year thing. And I keep telling people, I said, when the temperature drops below my age, then I have a problem. And so each year that threshold changes. And so that's where that came. So I think before, when was that, 2007 or something like that? So before then, I was okay, but that was 18 years ago. And so, or however many years ago, maybe it was, I think it was 2007. No, Barack Obama was president around that time. So it had to have been after 2008 then. But anyhow, that temperature threshold just went up another notch this past week as I celebrated another birthday.
Yes, happy
You
belated.
didn't, yeah, you didn't even text me, call me, send me a Facebook message. Hey, dog, happy
I mean,
birthday,
the
nothing.
hurt in your face makes it seem like I've ruined the day.
No, 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 no. That was the best gift of all. Thank you.
My apologies. It's not
Man,
quite a celebration until it's acknowledged. I hear you, Mark.
the
Happy belated
shade,
birthday.
the shade. I don't understand it. I don't really get terribly excited about my birthday, frankly. I don't celebrate. I don't like really being the focus of attention a lot, which I know you probably find that to be surprising, but I really don't. I don't like being openly celebrated. It's embarrassing to me. I'm like, I don't why. And so I get joked about because one of my favorite, one of my biggest pet peeves is for people to say, I deserve this. And I have a problem with that, to say I deserve something. Maybe that's my own personal issue or something, because I think there are a lot of other people who are more disciplined, more intelligent, more kind, more generous, more compassionate than me, who aren't nearly as blessed as I am. So I can't say that I deserve something. It's only by I'm getting spiritual now, but it's only by the grace of God that I get to enjoy some of the things that I get to enjoy. So I'll never get to the point where I'll say that I deserve it. I'm saying by God's mercy and His grace, I get to enjoy it.
Maybe that's why Trump isn't sure if he's going to get to heaven. Because he
He deserves
deserves
it
that in the
all.
ballroom in the
there's
private
there's
jet.
a worship song that says, you're worthy of it all. You're worthy of it all." Yeah, from you were all things, and for you are all things. You deserve the glory, and I think Trump would love that song to be directed toward him.
Well,
But
it's election season right now. I don't know if you guys have a mayor that's being up for election, but we've got city council positions up. We've got, of course, got the mayor position up. So it is quite the political campaign going on, and I'm so sick of the countless text and phone calls that are coming on my phone.
uh-oh.
But I do want to remind people, do check to see if this is an election year for you and make sure you go out and vote.
Yeah. I it's interesting, and I don't know if this is a good thing or not. Maybe I shouldn't say this publicly, but I used to get all these text messages and everything, contribute to this campaign here or there, and I'm not very enthusiastic about contributing to any campaigns this year. And it's not
Have you
because of the
ever just
candidates.
been enthusiastic about writing a check or?
When I thought that it might make a difference, then yeah, I was enthusiastic about it. But I'm not sure that it really makes a difference anymore. Um, there's a lesson that I learned, and that was that when you pray, you should pray God's will, not our will necessarily. I mean, we can ask, we can make supplications and say, "Hey, this is what I would like to see happen, God," and if it's your will, we should end every prayer is that, nevertheless, not my will, but your will be done. Again, it goes back to that whole selfishness thing, thinking that I should deserve something or another. I'm like, God, I'd much rather your will be done. And honestly, the lessons, I'm going to take a short bunny trail down the road because I don't think I've shared this testimony before, but maybe I did some years ago for where. But it was when my wife was pregnant with my daughter, and she was getting ready to deliver prematurely. And we were praying initially that, that she'd be able to carry the term. And then the Lord clearly said to me that evening, she said, Courtney is going to be born tonight, but she is not going to have any complications. Her lungs are going to be fully developed, and she was too young for that anyway. But he said there will be no complications from it. And so instantly I shared that with my wife, and we began to pray for her to come that night and for there to be no complications, because our personal will would have been that she carried to full term. But God said, this is what my plan is. And so, like, yeah, I'll pray your plan. And so your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. And so at this point, I'm thinking, like, should I actually be giving money to try to advance a cause that I don't necessarily believe is um, the plan of God at this point? I don't. I would love to be able to see Democrats win and Democrats assume things, but I don't think it's going to change the course of anything. It might change the the way things unfold, but the eventual destiny is still the same. So you can turn left here and then make three right turns and still be in the same place, or you can turn right and make three left turns and still wind up in the same place. And so that's my particular bent on it. But maybe again, maybe in the future I'll start feeling like donating. So every time those text messages come through, I press stop.
Well, people would make that argument to not vote. And so I would put the caveat on that is to, at least from my standpoint, is we don't know what God's will is unless he reveals it to you. And
Right.
so he is still asking you to walk in obedience. And so if again, if you do feel like a candidate is more aligned with your beliefs, I would encourage you to go vote.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of excited about the New York, the mayoral elections over there. And I'm kind of excited to see what comes of it. Because I mean, I do think if Mondamier wins, one, it does say, I mean, I know we're talking about a very liberal state, very democratic state, so or as well as city that we're talking about. And so it wouldn't necessarily probably be too much of a shock if they go for a Democratic candidate, but at the same time, the fact that it is getting so much acknowledgement over some of his policies, which I know people would like to define them as socialist, but again, I will dare say, for the most part, people are looking for government to be a tool for social programs. It just is what it is. But nonetheless, it'd be interesting to see then if the direction moves from what we're seeing now, that's more of an oligarch, to, or if we're going to see a little bit more socialism.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even know why you have to put the quotation marks in it, because socialism has been so badly vilified. And I watch this now. Every random word that comes out of a conservative's mouth now is like, that's Marxism, that's communism, and it's socialism, and those are words that they've been using since the early 1900s, to spook people into voting and doing what they want them to do. To say, hey, all evil resides within socialism, and the reality of it is that much of the early church was built on a socialist platform. They had all things in common. Nobody had lack. And if there was a need, the community came together, and that was a church. And people say, well, that was the early church. Well, that was an early church government. There was still a government within those persons who were part of that church. And now you want to say, well, this is a secular government. Well, if it's a secular government, let it follow its secular rules. You can't have it both ways. You can't, in one breath, say that from a socialist standpoint, if the Bible, early church in the Bible, was a socialist uh, economic system, then you say, well, we're not living in that type of situation. We're in a democracy or we're in a republic, and so we're in a secular government. Well, then, if it's a secular government, then don't try to impose your religious beliefs and say that we should have changed these laws because they're against the laws of God. You're speaking out of both sides of your mouth. You can't really have it both ways. It has to be one or the other. You're either going to follow the precepts of God or you're going to follow and hold the government accountable to its own precepts, the laws that it's written. And so, but I hear people throw that term out a lot of times. And they're like, Marxist. And I'm thinking like, and again, I know me saying this is going to get me labeled as a Marxist because I've already been called a Marxist. But the central theme to Karl Marx theory was that there are two classes. There's a proletariat, the working class, and the bourgeoisie are the ones who control the means of production, the people who, the wealthy. And eventually, what happens is that if the wealthy keeps exploiting the poor for the sake of getting wealthier and wealthier, then they're going to recognize it. You don't think that poor people are going to recognize that they've been taken advantage of to help make you rich? It was, to me, it's obvious. And at some point, they'll revolt against that. Labor unions are one of the first and earlier examples of how, when they come to that realization and say, hey, we need some type of protection against the greed of the mega wealthy. We need some protection. Labor unions was an example of that. And if you want to say that was probably produced from a Marxist perspective or a Marxist type belief that the proletariat needs some protection from the bourgeoisie, well then so be it. Then that's a Marxist society. And I know a lot of conservative people don't particularly the corporations, big corporations don't really like labor unions because they help protect them against the wiles of the big corporate monster.
Well, speaking of social programs, SNAP.
Mhm.
Should we care then? Because it was interesting. I was listening to this journalist interview some people in New York about who they voted for, and they were talking specifically at the Upper West Side, which is, I guess, one of the older as well as probably wealthier sides of New York. And obviously, no surprise, many of them said Cuomo. And it's always interesting when someone's like, yeah, I mean, I know that he has some harassment issues, but that's just personal. When it comes to running the city, he did a good job. You kind of think, are we ignoring the nursing home incidents, or that doesn't matter? But nonetheless, a lot of people said Cuomo just because it's an established, he's had history. But one person said, "Oh, because we're a capitalist society." And so then I'm just like, well, going to SNAP, should we care that it is going to expire, or should we have a concern that no, we're going to have millions of people without nutrients, which some people would argue should be a right, at least something that the government should have resources to supply for. Where are you on the shutdown? Are you ready to put blame on one party or the other? Are you, or does the SNAP thing for make you shift one way or the other, or are you just sitting back and watching?
I'm just sitting back and watching at this point because one thing I know, Jesus said, "The poor will always be among you," and we're not going to. But I will say that this is the irony that I heard this past week or so, and that was that they were talking about when you start considering that 42 million Americans. That's out of 330, that's what, like 9% of our population, or maybe more than that, 10 or 12% of the population requires federal assistance from the government to put food on their table. I get the ones that are disabled, but and it's a smaller percentage of those, but the vast majority of the people who get SNAP benefits are children. And and then the elderly, and then also some of the disabled. I think disabled is probably about 8%, if I recall correctly. When you consider that there is that many children in America who and adults in America who require financial assistance just for food. That's all this is. It's for food. To be able to put food on your table, you need assistance from the government. You can look at that and say two things. One, you can say, well, they just need to get out and get a job. But the reality of it is that in order to make enough money in this country, to be able to put food on your table where you don't need the assistance of the federal government, we have to make some changes in the federal minimum wage. And the very ones who was saying things like, well, it's our position, what we would like to do is to help create an economy, some of the Republicans were saying. We'd like to create an economy where people don't have to be on SNAP. Is that right? Well, why don't you change the federal minimum wage then? Do you think that it's just naturally going to change because out of the kindness of the hearts of the corporate whoremongers? You think that they're just going to like, hey, you know what? We should pay our employees more so that they don't need.
Hence labor unions.
Yeah, exactly. It's not going to happen, and so even if it does happen, it's going to be such a small incremental increase. Competition, yes, competition for employments. When an unemployment rate is low and it's sustained at low rates, yes, you can raise your wages through competition. But the rate of inflation has so far outpaced the rate of wage increase that it's not going to catch up just waiting for competition, because people will accept a position making 20 cents an hour more than they did before and still keep them below the minimum level to be considered. I mean, below the minimum threshold for poverty. So I think it's a little hypocritical for Republicans to say things like, we want to create an economy that helps it or makes it so that people don't require assistance from the government when you're not willing to set a minimum standard for their compensation. Democrats, I get what their position on that is, and that is that they say, okay, we need to take a stand right now. We need to grow a backbone and say, you guys need to protect health insurance premiums. I had a friend of mine posted something that actually a relative posted something that their insurance premium was going from like $680 a month to $2,300 a month.
Which 680 was already having me choked.
Exactly. And that was his exact comment. He was like, 680 was already was a lot. Now you expect me to do 2,300? And that's a reality. People can't afford to get that type of health insurance premium, pay that type of insurance premium. And Democrats have to fight this battle. And I know Republicans saying, well, if they just open up the government, we'll be willing to negotiate again. Where have they heard that story before? Fool me once, shame on me. Fool me, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me.
And in this instance, for the Democrats, was it the ninth? I mean,
yeah, they realize finally that the Republicans are not reliable partners, and they say that they will negotiate in good faith once they get what they want, but the reality is that they won't. And and I understand why that's necessary for them to go through that. The compassionate part of us would say, "Hey, why don't you guys just cave in?" And now they're playing a game of chicken. Who's going to cave in first? And sounds like two federal judges are now forcing, quote unquote, forcing, which I don't know if they really have the authority to force President Trump to go into the emergency funds to help fund SNAP benefits.
well,
But
that's
even still,
another
that's
issue, though, is that they have the ability to fund through, I think it's the Department of Agriculture. I think they have some funding there that they could use to help supplement. Because what ends up happening is either the states are going to have to go into deeper funding, because the states do to some degree contribute to some of that for their individual constituents. And so either the states are going to have to find their emergency fund to try to overcompensate what they were getting from the federal government, or again, the federal government could release some of that funding through the Department of Agriculture. And it just takes, I guess, a swipe of Donald Trump or someone to say it. Because I believe I've seen where people have asked the head of the department, will they release, and so far it's been no, I'm not going to do that. And so to me, when Republicans are making this argument that, see, the Democrats are the reason why you guys can't eat, as if only lower income people support Democratic candidates. But nonetheless, it's interesting in that no, Republicans, you can still do something. You just don't want to. But I
Yeah,
will say to that, to some degree, the federal government is the biggest, largest employer. So if you're thinking this is only going to affect low income people that are getting SNAP, you don't recognize how much money goes dispersely into corporations to support SNAP. It goes into states to support SNAP. Goes into again, if the government remains shut down, we're talking about massive people who are not getting paid from the federal government, the largest employer, that is going to need assistance. And so a lot of these corporations rely on government contracts. And so without those government contracts, their employees will either need to go on SNAP or would have to find other means of getting huge, deals. And so it's not just um, the low income people that are relying on the federal government. It is corporations, it's a lot of us. And that's honestly to some degree why he was able to use that to win, telling these corporations, hey, I will allow you guys to run the government, make sure you get all the contracts that you want to support your business, and not give you any regulations to force you to either remain here or to hire or to raise income or pay any of that. And so I just wanted to put that out there because I think people often forget, no, this is helping you too. You know, grocery stores rely on SNAP just as much as they rely on their residents to come in and purchase. So
yeah, yeah. It's an unfortunate situation, but I think one of the things that who's the guy, the Rick Vogt or something like that, is the director of the Office of Management and Budgets or whatever. He understands just how interconnected the United States economy and marketplace is with the government, and which is one of the reasons why Trump has been able to strong arm, a lot of other institutions, whether they're law firms or whether
media
they're
platforms.
academic institutions, media platforms. So he understands completely like that. And the goal is to actually uncouple the dependence and to relieve the dependence on the federal government. That's basically one of the biggest precepts of
To
conservatism is
relieve the dependence from the lower income, because again, these big
right.
corporations are
They
going to
still
remain.
they still want the
They
benefits.
want right.
They
They
want their
want to be
SNAP
able to manipulate
benefits.
the government for their own, goals.
Yeah, but I don't know that there is going to be an immediate easy fix, even if Trump was to release the emergency funds. It's only $5 billion. When you say only 5 billion, but
I
think
know,
about
right?
$9 billion a month. It takes $9 billion. The government provides $9 billion a month to supply these SNAP benefits to different states and to the recipients. That's a lot of money per month. That's,
It
what,
is.
118 billion or something,
And you
108
imagine they're still
billion
fighting
a
over
year.
that U.S. aid money that Clinton, may not Clinton, that Trump refused to disperse to Africa and whatever. And the Supreme Court has ruled that they've allowed Trump's, halt of that to remain. But that could feed a lot of people, and yet it wasn't released.
Yeah. I think there's a war on poor people right now. There is a war. And I listen, the poor people, Karl Marx was right on something. Poor people are going to revolt. And you press people far enough, Now there will be some people who will say, I need to comply. I will come right into line just because I'm desperate and even I need some kind of money. But they'll still eventually realize that even the money that you have is insufficient. And so I think this is all part of a bigger scheme, a bigger, I don't know that it's an intentional plan of somebody's. I think I like to believe that people have earnest intent. They really think that the plan that they have is going to work.
It
I
will
do
work
think
for
that they're,
them, but surely you don't think that their intent to work means there will be some moral good out of it.
I do think that there are a lot of conservatives who believe that if the corporations do better, if employers do better, that they will be generous to their employees and provide benefit to their employees. Some people genuinely believe in this trickle down economic theory. Some people just want to exploit it. I get that, and I'm not so bold to say that everybody recognizes that it's not a realistic expectation or goal. But there are some people who genuinely believe that if a rising tide lifts all ships. Yeah, that's the dictum, or at least the adage that they use to help console their consciences
I was
about
gonna
what
say
they're
you
doing.
could believe that while still saying, but I'm picking this because I prefer the money to go to the rich. I mean, because you can also believe, I believe raising minimum wage will help people of low income. I mean, I don't know if they believe that too. But of the two, what they're still saying is, but I would prefer to help the rich and hope that they will be generous in passing that on versus to go directly to the people in need.
Yeah. Well, to that end, my question is why do we in this country seem to favor the rich, the affluent, the wealthy, the people who are of influence and of power? Why do we tend to do
You're
that? That's
answering
just
your
a
own question.
natural. Is that a natural tendency? It's the so if we claim to be Christians, so some of that behavior is antichrist and not the
You have to
antichrist. I'm saying this.
explain it to the people.
It's what I'm saying is so. It's a couple things. There's a scripture I think in Matthew that talks about when Jesus was talking to those persons around him, and he said, um, when I was naked, you didn't feed me. When I was hungry, you did. I mean, you didn't clothe me. When I was hungry, you didn't feed me. And then some of them said, well, when did we see you naked? When did we see you hungry? When did we see you in prison? And he said, well, as much as you've done unto the least of these, you've done unto me. And so we're talking about it's easy for us to look at and say, hey, these people, the things that are not happening in my neighborhood. And so I'm okay with that. Or maybe I do have some distant relatives, maybe some close relatives that are impacted by this. And I'm like, well, they'll make it through it. They're tough, they're resilient people. And, we've been through hard times before. Everybody else be through that. But there are a lot of people who are insulated by their wealth. And and I'm not going to say that to castigate them or anything like that. I'm fortunate and I'm blessed that at this point, some of it I'm insulated against. And I understand that there's some privilege that I have as a doctor that I'm not necessarily directly impacted by some of these things, but I have family members, I have friends, even people who I don't know. I still have compassion for those people who are struggling month to month, and that a $400 bill, unexpected bill, will basically topple them and send them into financial duress. So there are those people, but we still, it's easy for those persons who are insulated from these impacts, these economic impacts, to disregard that and to look at a different principle. Oh, yeah, well, we can weather this storm a little bit longer. No, you can, but they can't. And I think Jesus would look at some of us and say, when you did or thought that they could weather the storm and you neglected them, you also neglected me. And I think a lot of our conservative friends are not really considering this. And why do I focus on the conservatives? Because they're the ones who claim to be Christians. Democrats, even though there are Democrats who are, then tons of Democrats who are Christians, they don't build a whole platform on saying we are the party of Christ, we are the party of family values and religion. They say we're the party of liberty and rights and upholding the Constitution, even when it does not comport with what our own personal convictions are, moral convictions are. And so why am I focused? That's why I'm focusing on conservatives, because you guys are the ones who are claiming to represent Jesus Christ. But look at what you're doing to the least of these. And if you're doing it to the least of these, you're doing it to unto Christ. So I have a problem with that. I also have a problem with us focusing on the rich in this society, because Jesus gave another parable. He said, when you have a party, and he said, he uses as an example for why he even came to earth. He said, when you have a party, don't invite all the dignitaries and the people who can pay you back. He said, invite those who are unable to pay you back, the poor. Go out into the street and find and compel any person who is willing to come to sit at this table to come and celebrate. Because he was saying that's the reason why Jesus himself came to earth, was to set the captives free, to liberate those who are oppressed, and to bring hope and restoration to those who have been deprived and destitute. But we don't really believe that aspect of the gospel. We don't practice that aspect of the gospel, because why? Because it doesn't give us the immediate reward. We want to invite all the dignitaries to our table and forget all about the peasants.
I think there's a difference between service and the adoration. And I don't know if you're suggesting just the service part or if you're suggesting both, in terms of what we are to do for the least. I imagine to some degree, people, even if whether they're conservatives, Democrats, people in general, I think sometimes they think service in terms of helping is like that bonus you do that puts you in that, oh, you're a good person category. But the bare minimum is to be able to support yourself, and to support your family. And so then in that realm, when we're talking about what you do for the least, I think if we look at the least as people to be adored or to be admired, then yeah, I think that certain not only will we serve them, but we would also make sure that they are well taken care of. But if we see them as people that we must serve because we are fortunate or blessed or considered, and I think this is part of that prosperity gospel, but considered to be the chosen, then we should automatically see ourselves as not the least above them, and kind of give them crumbs or whatever. Um, and so, but I say that to say, I think that when you're even putting those scriptures in there, you're really putting it in that context of, hey, you saw me naked, you saw me in these vulnerable positions by which I needed your help. But I'm also asking, well, are we supposed to put it in that, oh, I am to see you as you are closer to God than I am because of the circumstance of being naked, or because you are, unable to feed yourself. And by that, then should I show the admiration or adoration or the privilege to be able to serve?
I don't know that it should have added the privilege or the, say that again, to serve
I,
the.
adoration for you, so that that is then compelling my service.
I'm not sure that I would say that we're supposed to necessarily adore, adulate, or even emulate the poor. I think what Jesus was trying to do is to teach us to have compassion on the poor and to not esteem the rich. I want to read that scripture. It's Luke 14. It says, Jesus said to his host, he said, when you give a luncheon or a dinner, do not invite your friends, your brothers or sisters, your relatives, or your rich neighbors. If you do, they may invite you back, and so you will be repaid. But when you give a banquet, invite the poor, the crippled, the lame, the blind, and you will be blessed. Although they cannot repay you, you will be repaid at the resurrection of the righteous. And so I'm thinking not many of us have that mindset to say, hey, I'm going to do something to and I would say to honor the poor, but to bless the poor, or to, I guess the issue is that when you invite all of your, it's like name dropping. When you start doing name dropping, somehow or another it seems to elevate you. You use that to elevate you because you think a lot of times that that's going to help put you in a higher place. But Jesus was really saying, hey, don't do things, don't offer benevolence with the expectation of you being elevated in the sight of man as a result of it. I don't know that how many people will actually elevate you for, your service if you come to a party and all you see are very poor people and we crippled the lame, and you're like, man, that was a slamming party. you know
And it still
I
could
mean,
be.
and it could be, and it could be. So just imagine you have the most elaborate of parties, the highbrow society party, and then you walk into there, and there are people who with torn and rattan clothing, and who barely walk around, who are blind, who can't see, and can't even appreciate all of the things that you have. Um, and then one of your best buddies, one of your dignitary friends come in. You happen to invite them too, and they walk in and like, ooh, this isn't the kind of place that I want to be at. Interestingly, like, because I'll use this as an example, even just from a standpoint of my running my practice, I see, or when I owned my practice, I saw inmates. And so I had to be mindful that when I was having days that I had a lot of commercial patients that come into the office, I recognized that a lot of them would be uncomfortable about inmates being brought into the office while they're there. Even people with special needs. I saw a lot of patients with special needs. And on days that I knew that I had a lot of commercial patients, I knew that if those persons were coming in, some of which would scream uncontrollably, would have certain tics or whatever, and or maybe slobbering on themselves, and they just weren't the most attractive patients. Um, and you still need commercial patients in order to make your practice run. But if the vast majority of people who would come in with those commercial patients, they came in and they sat next to somebody like that, a lot of us would say, I'm not coming back to that office. This isn't the right kind of place for me, because I need much more higher level service. But I chose to outfit my office in a way that regardless of what background you came from, you would come into that place and you felt like not that you were at a community or indigent clinic, not by the facilities at least. You look at the facilities and you're like, man, this is a nice place right here. And those persons who came in who were indigent, who were incarcerated, who were disabled, they say, I'm being treated not just kindly, but I'm being treated in a facility that looks like I don't belong. What they might say, I don't belong in this place. Why? Because I've never been in a place, I've never been welcomed in a place like this before. And so I would much rather have that testimony than the testimony of people who would come in and say, oh no, this is not good. I mean, the facilities are fine, but there was an inmate ushered in while I was sitting there, and it made me so uncomfortable. I'll never go back there again. And that's the reality of where we are in terms of our society and our expectations today. And I think that's wrong. That does not necessarily reflect the instruction of Christ. We elevate those who are esteemed by man, usually regarding their financial wealth and their status. And it's a love of money that the Bible tells us is the root of all evil. But we see that, and we still adulate, and we still aspire to be those types of persons with that type of money.
Well, that's part of my point. I mean, one, I feel like in the scripture that you just referenced, it's all about your intent. Because we also know that when Jesus did have that big party with tax collectors and, people who have of certain wealth, and the Pharisees and the like were saying, "Oh, how dare you eat with those people?" I mean, he's saying, "Hey, it's about the ministry." And so, I am saying, okay, if you're saying, "Hey, what you do for the least," as if that is your job, first of all, you should yourself identify as the least as well. And I think that's partly what's missing, is that we identify ourselves as the people who are the privileged, the elite. And so we're not the least. We're the
Because we
ones that
deserve.
should.
So you're proving my point. See, I don't think we should be saying I deserve certain
No, but it's not a deserve. To me, if you when you see someone the least, and you have this to some degree, and I know you don't like to say honor them, but you honor them. That then is what will naturally cause you to serve them, versus if you see them as, "Oh, I'm better than." I don't know if then you would find like, "Oh, now I have to be intentional about it. It's not coming natural to me." And so that's then why I say, okay, then when we first of all put ourselves in this pedestal that we're better than, I think then we miss the point of what Jesus is also trying to say. But if we put ourselves in this point of, "Hey, even someone walking around naked is no better than me because I'm fully exposed in some other area." I mean, you are. I mean, we like, no one is better than the other. And just like I would want someone to help me if they see that I am lacking in some area, I should help someone else when they are lacking in a certain area. Because again, it doesn't mean that I'm better than them. It just may mean that in certain areas I may know more or I may not know more. Sometimes you get to know them, you may think, "Why aren't I rocking around naked?" I mean, this is, again, using that as an example, but I'm just saying sometimes when we do get to know people and establish relationships, we better understand why they move the way they move. And to some degree, we may learn something. But if we are looking at it as, "Oh, these are people who are poorer than me," and what we saw in this last election is we then use them or we vilify them to say, "Oh, they must be bad people because they don't have access to the riches that God has given me, or they don't have access to the privilege that I was born into."
thing.
Then to me, we put them in this less than, and I don't think that that is what Jesus is asking us to
Yeah. A viewer said the least of these get crab legs.
do.
and I agree. Why not? Why not? Why not? Why not treat the least of these to crab legs? Let me correct you on something. I didn't say I have a problem with honoring them. Actually, in fact, I think I used the word honor. I myself to honor them. I'm not sure that I was saying adore them, and we can
Yeah.
talk about what the difference in some of those things are. As in to say, hey, I esteem to be in your situation. I'm not saying that. But I don't think that we should look at any person and say that I'm better than this person, like you said. I think we should probably look at them and say, I am that person, except for the grace of God. And to me,
And
that's the
then
perspective.
propelled to then serve, or to then help or serve or whatever
Yeah,
it is, that should immediately then come natural once you recognize that.
exactly. And which is the reason why I say I don't deserve anything. And
Try
yeah,
not to
you
start
know what?
smiling when you say it, because I don't know then if you believe
I do
it.
honestly. If I got what I deserved, then I would be dead and I would be condemned to an eternity in hell. But I don't get what I deserve. I get what God's grace has allowed me to get, and His mercy has extended toward me, and that's just a whole perspective. But we get it wrong in this society because nobody wants to be the poor person in this country. Everybody wants to be the rich person, not just in this country, but that's around the world. Who wants to be
I
poor?
mean,
Nobody
no,
wants to be
yes,
there.
you don't want to be poor, but I'm just challenging people, think of it as, "Oh, I am fighting to not be poor." In fact, think of it as, but the reality is that we are all poor. We're all poor.
Bill Gates ain't poor.
I mean, but
Elon
and that's
Musk
what
ain't
we need
poor.
to start teaching. We are all poor. I mean, we all help each other. To some degree, there should be an interdependence on each other.
So maybe there is in the grand scheme of thing. I keep telling you that I don't think that this is the schemings of an individual or a small group of people. I don't think, and I know there are a lot of people who have these conspiracy theories to say there's an elite cabal who wants all these things to happen. I think it's just all the planning of God to say, I want to show you how monetary systems fail you. I'm going to show you how man's government fail you, because it's inherently flawed. Capitalism is inherently flawed because it feeds the rich. It feeds those persons who have um, who control the power and who control the means of production. And power corrupts. How they say power corrupts, absolute power absolutely corrupts. What happens is that it's innate within us that when we get more money, we become more selfish. And even those persons who are great philanthropists and who give away billions and billions of dollars, kudos to them. But the reality of it is that it's just a small portion of what they have. And one of the reasons why they give that way is because they know they have an abundance left over. Jesus gave the parable of the woman who gave her last penny. And he said, whose sacrifice was greater? Was it this person who gave 10 times that much, or was it hers? It was hers because it was all that she has. And so when we see how much money people give, and be like, in America, they talk about how people's defense for America a lot of times say we're the most generous country on the face of the earth. We are, but the reason why a lot of times, if we did not get the financial benefits of giving that we get, would we still be as charitable of a country as we are? And I have to convict myself about that because yeah, I give to charitable organizations, I give to my church, and everything. But the question is would you be so willing to give if you didn't recognize that there was a tax benefit in it? And that goes back to that whole parable about throwing the banquet. Do you give generosity because you expect to be repaid? Do you invite those persons of honor to your guests because you expect to get repaid back, to get paid back? Would you do the same thing if you had no expectation of repayment in this earth? Or is the repayment in the afterlife, is that sufficient for us right now? And I suspect that most of us would probably not give the same way we would give today if there were not the financial benefits of it.
Which is why then I continue to say, think of yourself as poor. Because quite honestly, the more you get, the more dependent you become on whatever it is that you're receiving. Like going back to the money, the more money you make, the more money you're likely going to spend. And you become then dependent on that amount of money coming in so that you can continuously spend that same amount or a higher amount. But if you consider yourself again, just as the poor walking around, hopefully you give more because you
I
recognize
consider
anything is extra. That is, I mean, hopefully you give more. But if you can't, then to me, you're no better off because you're equally dependent on something. At least they're dependent on food. You're dependent on things that really you should not be dependent on.
I consider myself poor, but other people come up to me and say, "I want crab leg dinner. Can you take?" I'm like, "I wish I could." Uh, and the reality is, a lot of times we can't. We just
But
choose
that's what I
not
think
to.
though Republicans, because again, I'm using Republicans as they're in charge of the House and the Senate right now. To me, you are dependent on something, and whether that is some tax lobbying dollars, whether that is fame, there is something that you are so dependent on that you cannot let go of healthcare. And there's some people who don't even recognize Obamacare and the Affordable Care Act are the same thing. But I give kudos to Marjorie Taylor Greene, which can you believe that?
Right.
Right. Who
Your
is
town
then, all
or
right.
your state.
But back to our point, I mean, to some degree she flipped because now she recognized, wait a minute, I'm no better off than the people that are using the ACA because if it triples for them, it affects me. And then so that's why I'm like, you are dependent on something that really you should not depend on. And it is allowing you to hurt people who depend on something that is food, it's something basic.
Yeah. I don't know. I think we're spending too much time on trying to prevent things, the inevitable. Uh, we
When
really are.
starvation is inevitable.
It is. I mean, if you believe the Bible, it is. It is inevitable. And I'm not saying that we should abandon our efforts to try to do that, to try to prevent it. And we should implement every delay tactic that we can implement. But the reality is that whoever is in office is still going to unfold the way that the Bible says it's going to unfold. And so while we're spending effort and time on trying to prevent it, we should also be spending time and effort, and I think even more effort on trying to prepare for it. Because a lot of times people put all their hope in a governmental system and saying, hey, I think if the Democrats get in, then this is going to all be fixed. But when the Democrats get in and it gets worse, then everybody says, oh, no, we need the Republicans to fix it. And then Republicans come in, Donald Trump does what he does. And then they're like, oh my
And then you
God, we need
realize
the
it can
Democrats.
continue to get worse.
It just continues to get worse. It really does. And if you think that the next Democratic run of the stretch of this is going to make it any better, uh, don't you're just fooling yourself. Just think, I heard there's some discussion about them. They need to get rid of the filibuster, and that this is the time for the Republicans to use the nuclear option to pass the continuing resolution or to pass a budget. And one of the Democrats was like, "Oh, I wish they would. I wish they would," because they talked about it before when the Democrats considered it when they were talking about stacking the Supreme Court. They considered it when they were talking about passing other budgets or whatever. But at some point, the other party is going to have control, and even the stuff that Donald Trump has done up to this point, and that the Supreme Court has allowed him to do, is going to have some unintended devolutional effect, meaning that in the
Yeah,
future,
when the next party takes over, then they'll
next
have
parties they're
president's
going to take it to
immunity
the
and
next level.
right,
Not just the
to
same
fire
thing, but
people
they're
left,
going to
right,
take
up
it to
and
the
down.
next level. And, and so you see where this is going. You see where the pattern is going. Yeah, if you went that low, we can go even lower.
But I
And
will
and
correct you on something. Something does get better. I think you just recognize whether that was truly a fight that you felt like should have been fought. Because I mean, I will agree the tariffs is decreasing our debt, but now do I think that that was the fight that it should have been fought for that? No, because it's also increasing people's inability to again combat the upcoming inflation or the
yeah,
inflation that we have been in for a while and will continue to have to ride.
so it's still the people. It's still the people. So whether you give them a tax as inflation, or you give them a tax as in just an income tax, whichever one, it's still. But the issue is that a gallon of milk costs a poor person more than it costs a wealthy person, even if they buy it from the same store. And when I say cost, I'm talking about the impact on their finances. And so, yeah, the cost of milk can go up. And you're just like, yeah, well, to somebody who's wealthy, that doesn't matter. But to somebody who isn't, that really hurts them a lot more. So we're probably better off raising the income tax on you saying, okay, it's more fair for me to raise the income tax on the wealthy person rather than to tax this poor person for milk that costs $4.39 a gallon. And I know people don't like that, but I know
Well,
Republicans don't like
according to
that. But
you, your earlier statement, some people truly believe in trickle down economics. So then, no, don't tax the rich, and maybe they will share their wealth with the poor. I mean, you said some people truly believe that.
they do. But
And
I'm a firm believer that if you make a lot of money in this country, you should be taxed at a higher rate. And I'm saying that now as I'm looking at my tax bill. It's like, oh Jesus,
I'm
I
still
need to
paying the
find
full
ways to.
status over here.
Oh Jesus, I had a good run for a while, but now I'm looking at, man, I have to pay taxes like this, and I thank God that I'm able to pay them. I hope that I'll be able to pay them. So, but I don't know what next year since I'm employed now. I'm like, man, now I got to actually pay taxes. This is a problem. But the reality, I do believe that people should pay a higher tax rate because they have the privilege of making this amount of money in this country. Not every environment, not every economy are you able to make as much money as you make, Tanya. And some people, you know, really, I mean, think about it. This is a privilege that you have to be able to make this kind of
It
money,
is.
and the fact that you may have to lose 7% more of your income than somebody who makes 50% less than you do is it to me I think is incredibly selfish because you're like, yeah, okay, you I make twice as much as you are, and I'm busting because I have to pay 7% more in taxes than you do. No, this that's what fairness is in this country because we pay the same amount for gas. We pay the same amount for milk and bread. We pay the same amount for eggs. Yes, we do. That's equality, right? But it's not equitable. It is not equitable. And there's no way that if I make twice as much money as you do, that our lifestyles are going to be equitable. And I don't necessarily say that it needs to be equitable, but we need to make some type of effort toward equity, whether we reach equity or not. And we should also make some kind of effort to make sure that those persons who were not as fortunate as we are have an opportunity to eat and feed their family. There's a scripture in Old Testament, I can't remember exactly where it was, when it says that says when you reap your fields, don't reap them completely. Leave some around the edges, around the borders, so that when the poor people and the widows and the foreigners come into your land, that they'll be able to pull and have some sustenance from that. And so people who will say things like, your healthcare dollars are going to illegal immigrants or something like that. I'm like, you guys are totally missing the mark right now. And I can only imagine what Jesus is saying. It's like these people who claim to be mine are doing none of the things that I said do. All they're interested in, and the only thing that they can claim to be mine, is to say, yeah, you shouldn't be homosexual, and yeah, you shouldn't kill babies. But all the rest of the stuff that I want them to do, they've forsaken it. And he's like, I'm just have to wash my hands of them at some point.
Well, but I would even challenge from the Christian standpoint, you should see money in anything that you have as just another tool to give back. And not as a tool to make your life better in some kind of way. And I think when you see it that way, then you again you'll just naturally give it, and you'll also recognize that when you do that you get more. There are so many times I hear people who budget in that manner by which they see money again as more of a tool for giving or a tool for service, and they do see it as something from themselves. They end up getting more. And if you believe again back on the Christian side, if you believe one that it's more blessed to give than to receive, but also believe that the story of the talents, as you continue to grow what he has given you, he continues to add more fruit and gives it to you more exponentially. Then you shouldn't see money as this thing to hoard for yourself, but you should again just see it as a tool for helping others.
Well, there is one thing that I think that you said that I will take out of this. Not just one thing, but I do like that. I do like that money should be seen more as a tool to improve the lives of others more so than the tool to improve our own. And how we invest that money really determines who derives the most benefit from it. I'm not saying that everybody needs to, and don't hear me. I'm not saying that everybody needs to get more benefit from your money than you do. That's just impossible. The reality
I
is
mean, that's hard. But that's then why when you see someone naked, you realize they really did sacrifice everything over something. I mean, again, you're not gonna know what, but yeah, maybe not the word adoration, but there should not be oh, I'm better than when you see someone that doesn't have.
yeah.
And that's then all I'm saying.
And I'm saying you don't see yourself as better than them. you see yourself as them. Yeah. So so
Yes.
maybe those are
And
two
as them,
things.
you need someone, someone helps you, you know.
So maybe people can take that with them there. You heard it first here on the Roundtable Console.
Just trying to break down the scriptures as best as we can. Hopefully you guys have been tuning in, and I'm hearing some comments, so that's always great. We are here at 11 a.m. Eastern Time, 10 a.m. Central Standard Time, going live on Facebook. Hopefully we can catch you at the next episode. Make sure you stay tuned for a repeat of these episodes on K-Day Live as well as Star Radio. And you can also go and like us on YouTube and your favorite podcast platform to get weekly updates of these episodes. So until next Saturday, thank you guys so much for tuning in and have a blessed week.